Greetings, gentle viewers. This is Cinematic Investigations. And I am Sherlock. Not Sherlock Holmes, just Sherlock. Anyway, today we'll be looking at a film that is incredibly important to the modern zeitgeist, changed pop culture forever, and revitalized an industry that honestly nobody really saw coming at the time. The Avengers. This film is incredible, but you probably already knew that with the countless dollars spent on DVDs, tickets, merchandise, the franchise that's been going strong for about a decade now, the countless Halloween costumes, the rush by every other studio on the planet, it seems, to create their own cinematic universes, Universal, DC. Anyway, what is it about this film that managed to create something so great? Well, it's not about the directing or the soundtrack. These are solid, and in fact, I think the soundtrack is one of the most iconic ever made, but that's a personal opinion. But the thing is, this all wouldn't work without two things: a story worth following, and characters worth following. Now, most comic book films up to this point were kind of... the directors felt they had to fix the material by adding realism. But Marvel didn't do this. They thought that the properties had already proven themselves due to the fact that, well, the properties had been going strong since the 60s. So, if it's not the story that needs changing, then why change it at all? So, they make changes, of course. There are just certain things that are in comic books that are just completely insane, even to a studio as daring as Marvel is. Such as Galactus, although I'm fairly certain that's going to come one of these days. The whole Hela is Loki's daughter, whereas in the films he's Odin's daughter, because we don't want Loki to be too old or some bull like that. Anyway. So, what is the story? Well, it's fairly uncomplicated, really. Bad guy, MacGuffin, bad guy gets MacGuffin. Heroes capture bad guy sends MacGuffin away, bad guy attacks good guys rally to beat the bad guy and get MacGuffin back, and movie over. But it's in that simplistic structure that Marvel really brings you in. Because that story is something that everybody can kind of grasp. Unlike Batman vs. Superman, where they have a whole convoluted bad guy wants good guy to fight other good guy, so he gives magic rock to other good guy. The good guy doesn't know that, so he has to fight bad guys' goons, and that film, honestly, is just a train wreck, and I would actually like to go into more detail on it, but we're talking about the Avengers. So, what really caught people? What kept people there after the story is over? What kept them there for almost a decade after this movie came out? Character. Simply put, there are very disparate types of characters in this movie. Each of the different films preceding this one kind of exemplifies how comic books kind of mix and match genre whenever they kind of feel like it. There's the World War II pseudo period piece of Captain America, the techno-futuristic thriller of Iron Man, the monster kind of movie with the Incredible Hulk, the epic fantasy of Thor, and the super spies exemplified by Shield, Hawkeye, and Black Widow. So the real fun of this movie comes when they mix and match different characters to see what these characters would be like if they interacted with each other. Like, what would the too good to be true World War II propaganda hero react to a entire James Bond type secret spy organization? Or how does the God of Thunder react to a ogre that's transforms from man to monster through gamma radiation and the hormones he secretes when he's angry? That's what makes this entire project worth it. It takes these disparate, crazy ideas and brings them together in a, well, not exactly cohesive whole, but a more, it meshes well better than you think it would, because again, these ideas are crazy. An entire spy organization with a flying aircraft carrier. Okay, maybe in like a James Bond you could buy that, but in that same universe, having the God of Thunder just show up in a small Midwestern town in the middle of nowhere, that is just completely bonkers. But they found ways to make it work, and that's what makes these films worth watching over and over and over. As for character interactions, it's kind of Joss Whedon's best attribute as a director. Firefly, Serenity, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, even Justice League to a certain extent. He is really good at making characters interact the way that they would in reality. So when Thor and Iron Man show that they're both varying levels of immature by getting into a fist fight for no reason, it feels natural to the character. It feels like an argument these people would have at this specific time over these specific reasons. So the dialogue and the acting and the directing all work to make this kind of synergy, to make it all feel real, despite how absolutely completely insane the component pieces can be. The most straightforward plot point in this movie is that the Viking god of mischief is trying to hire a alien mercenary army to take over the Earth. It's just out there. So now that I've said all that I can think of about the character interactions without going into too specific details, because, well, I don't want to spoil anything, despite the fact that pretty much everybody on the planet has seen this movie by now. Some, I don't know, 5 years after it's came out. So let's move on to the directing decisions. It's not really a secret that most comic book films leading up to the Marvel Cinematic Universe weren't especially colorful. Daredevil, Ghost Rider, the Batman, most of the Batman films, Catwoman, the X-Men, X-Men 2, X-Men 3, all of them have either black or gray as their primary color scheme. Even lesser superhero works such as Shaq's Steel weren't especially, colorful, which is a little surprising, seeing as their comic book origins are so bright and, well, colorful due to the fact that, well, who wants to buy a comic with black as its primary color scheme with no differences whatsoever? Oh, there are certainly some that are, of course, but most of the comics in stores are designed to pop out at you, and color is an easy way of doing so. So, the best thing that these filmmakers decided was not to shy away from the fact that as comic book films, they shouldn't be ashamed of where they came from originally. Comic books have survived for decades for a reason, so this entire film is filled with scenes that are bright, colorful, catches the eye, and the entire film is brightly lit, and you could see everything that's going on, and there are these shots that are absolutely incredible that look like they came out of a comic panel. The one where they pan around the Avengers as they're in a circle preparing to do battle. The scene where Hulk punches the giant space whale and it just looks absolutely huge and incredible. Or the scene where he grabs Loki's leg and he goes, "Beauty God." Absolutely incredible. Anyway, I'm getting too excited. So this place is bright, it's colorful, it's designed to make you feel excited. It's fun. The movie is fun. It's trying to be fun. It's not trying to be serious or dark or have any great messages to it. Oh, it has some, of course, but it's not really. That's not really the point of the film. The point of the film is to be something that you watch, enjoy, and the end is basically a fireworks show celebrating the entire enormity of the entire film. This is something that they have never done before. A crossover that's absolutely massive with six movies leading up to it. 6! That's insane! So, the entire film is designed to be kind of an end zone dance for the entire creative team involved because they did something that looked absolutely impossible. And to their credit, it's conveys to the viewer as well. Now to speak about subtext. Those people in black in the previous title card are the World Security Council. And in the film, they serve an important purpose. They represent conventional studio wisdom. They don't think that the Avengers is going to work. They don't think that bringing together these disparate characters who could be thought of as representing the previous movies, they don't think they can work together as a cohesive whole. So, you root for the film to work because you root against the conventional studioism exemplified by the Security Council. Even Loki the villain doesn't believe this team's going to work either. So, the entire film basically gets you to root that you are going to love this film because you don't want the antagonists to be right because they're the bad guys and they can't be right. You have to love the movie because otherwise the bad guys are going to win. So that creates this kind of part of the back of your mind that goes, this movie's great. It makes you want to root for the film, which is very, very powerful. As for other subtext, there really isn't any subtext other than that. I could probably find some if I really peer hard enough. There just isn't much beyond the theme of it's nice to make new friends, we are stronger together than we are apart, basic stuff. But maybe the movie itself is a message. As I have stated before, a lot of the superhero films before this were very dark and dreary and depressing and oh so important to the lexicon, and Batman is a metaphor for surveillance states, or Superman wouldn't be trusted in the real world because we don't trust power, and blah blah blah. It's just, this movie is a statement that, you know what, it's just fine to sit down, watch some fireworks, start at the barbecue, have a little fun. Not everything has to be this big world-ending disaster. The films that came after this certainly dive into some of these themes, but other than that, it's a fairly simple story with fairly simple themes. So, and that's really all it needed to be, really. Now let's move on to the impact that this movie had on the entire film landscape and popular culture. The MCU has become the single most profitable venture in cinematic history, making billions of dollars. That alone indicates its impact. Not to mention the countless followers trying to create their own universes, like Universal, DC, although I've mentioned these before. But I think the impact is actually bigger than that. Once upon a time, superheroes were kind of a niche interest, mostly relegated to nerds, quote unquote, who buy comic books and play video games, which also used to be a niche subject. So this is kind of a shifting in the public lexicon. I've heard superheroes described as the new westerns, although I think it's more than that. They're not just the western, they're also the mythology. They're also mythology. They're also Star Wars. They're anything they really need to be at any point, really. I've heard people speculate that one day we'll get super sick of superheroes, and honestly, I just don't see it ever happening because of how vast the term superhero could be applied to. It could be a vigilante film, a science fiction film, a monster film. It could be anything, really. If they get sick of one type of superhero, they'll just create a different type of superhero. I don't think it'll ever truly go away the way that the westerns have. And that's also because westerns had this kind of historical subtext of manifest destiny that, honestly, we rightfully agree that it was a terrible thing to have happened. So, if you're going to take anything away from this, remember that superhero films, for good or ill, are here to stay, and the Avengers is a major reason it got off the ground to begin with. Quick shout out to Movie Bob, a relatively obscure YouTuber, for his highlighting of the subtext of his security council scene. I honestly didn't notice. And you should really check out his video. He goes into greater detail than I ever could about these sorts of things. So, that's all for now. Ta-ta.